The stars around Kepler 442 burned cold and distant as the Zephyrian fleet moved through space like ghosts. Their ships were beautiful and terrible, made of what looked like crystal and light. The hulls shifted and changed color as they moved, reflecting the starlight in ways that hurt human eyes to watch. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the planet below. His body was tall and thin, made of pure energy that glowed with a soft blue light. Like all Zephyrians, he could change his form at will, become solid or pass through walls like smoke. His people had lived for thousands of years watching younger races rise and fall like waves on a beach. "The planet is ours," reported his second-in-command, Lord Kytheron. "Their defenses are broken. The cities burn." Vexitar nodded slowly. This was the 15th world they had taken this year. Each one fell the same way. The younger races always tried to fight at first. They launched their missiles and fired their energy weapons. They screamed and begged and prayed to their small gods. But in the end, they all learned the truth. The Zephyrians were the only real gods in this galaxy. "Open communication channels to all worlds in this system," Vextar commanded. His voice carried the weight of ages, deep and cold like the space between stars. The message went out across all frequencies, reaching every ship, every station, every listening post within light years. Vextar's image appeared on screens throughout the system. To the humans watching, he looked like a being of pure light, terrible and beautiful at the same time. "People of this system," Vextar began, his voice echoing in the void. "I am Admiral Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire. We are your gods now. You have seen what happens to those who resist divine will. Your orbital platforms are dust. Your cities are ash. This is not cruelty, this is nature." He paused, letting his words sink in across the system. "On a dozen worlds, billions of beings listened in fear. You will surrender all military technology to us. You will provide tribute of rare metals and energy crystals. You will build temples in our honor and teach your children to worship us. Do this, and you will be allowed to live under our protection. Refuse, and you will join your defense platforms in the void." The transmission ended. Across the system, the silence was complete. No one dared to respond to a god. But the message had traveled farther than Vextar knew. At the very edge of the system, hidden in the shadow of a small moon, a human ship had been listening. The UES Defiance was a Titan-class dreadnought, one of the largest ships in the human fleet. Her hull was dark gray metal, scarred from a dozen battles across human space. She was not beautiful like the Zephyrian ships. She was built for war, every line and angle designed to kill. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge, watching the alien transmission with cold eyes. She was a small woman with graying hair and scars on her hands from years of military service. Around her, the bridge crew worked in tense silence. "Analysis Commander Torres," Chen said to her chief engineer. Commander Maria Torres looked up from her console. "The energy readings are off the charts, Captain. These aliens can manipulate matter at the molecular level. They're not using technology as we understand it. It's like they're rewriting the laws of physics." "Weapons?" Chen asked. "Nothing we've seen before," replied Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, the tactical officer. "They don't fire projectiles or energy beams. They just make things stop existing. The orbital platforms didn't explode, they just dissolved." Chen studied the tactical display showing the alien fleet. 15 ships, each one the size of a human battleship. They moved without visible engines, their formation perfect and strange. "How many people on those planets, Commander?" she asked, quietly. Torres checked her readings. "Best estimate? About 4 billion across all the inhabited worlds. 4 billion people, now under the rule of beings who called themselves gods." Chen had seen the recordings from the planet's surface before the communications went dark. Cities turning to dust, people running in terror, children crying for parents who would never answer. "Captain," said Communications Officer Park, "we're receiving a direct transmission from the alien fleet. They've detected us." The main screen changed to show Admiral Vextar's glowing form. Up close, his alien features were even more unsettling. His eyes were like stars, burning with cold fire. Unknown vessel, Vextar said, his voice carrying across the void. You will identify yourself and submit to divine authority. You have 1 minute to comply. Chen stepped forward, her jaw set in a hard line. Put me on screen, Park. The transmission opened. Chen found herself face to face with the alien admiral. If Vextar was surprised to see a human, he didn't show. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Defiance, she said, her voice steady and strong. We don't recognize your authority, and we sure as hell don't worship false gods. A ripple passed through the alien bridge. Vexitar's glowing form seemed to brighten with what might have been amusement. False gods? He repeated slowly. Captain? Chen of Earth, you amuse me. Watch. The screen changed to show one of the smaller moons in the system. Vextar raised his hand, and the moon simply changed. Its surface rippled like water, then reformed into a perfect sphere of crystal that caught the light of the local star. I can reshape matter with a thought, Vextar continued. I can pass through your hull like mist and tear your crew apart with my bare hands. I have lived for 3,000 of your years and will live for 3,000 more. What power do you mortals possess that could threaten a god? Chen smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Let me show you. She nodded to Rodriguez, who pressed a single button. A small probe launched from the Defiance, accelerating toward the crystal moon. When it hit, the explosion was tiny by space standards, just a few kilograms of antimatter. The crystal moon cracked. Then it shattered. Pieces of it flew outward in all directions, glowing hot against the darkness. That's called physics, Chen said. Even gods have to follow the rules eventually. The silence from the alien ship stretched for long seconds. Then Vextar began to laugh. It was not a pleasant sound. Clever, he admitted. But destroying an empty moon is not the same as facing divine wrath. Lord Kithran will demonstrate the difference. One of the alien ships broke away from the main fleet, accelerating toward the Defiance. It moved impossibly fast, ignoring the basic laws of momentum and inertia. Captain, Torres said urgently, that ship is heading straight for us. Estimated time to intercept, 6 minutes. Chen turned to her crew. Around her, men and women from a dozen different worlds prepared for battle. They were not gods. They were just human beings far from home and facing an enemy beyond their understanding. But they were her crew, and she would not let them die without a fight. All hands, this is the captain, she announced over the ship's communication system. We are about to engage an enemy that thinks it's a god. Let's teach it the difference between divine power and human determination. Battle stations. Alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Blast doors sealed. Weapons powered up. The Defiance turned toward the approaching alien vessel, her engines burning bright in the darkness. In the void between the stars, a god prepared to face a mortal. Neither knew that this moment would change the galaxy forever. Lord Kithran felt the familiar rush of power as his ship cut through space toward the human vessel. The inferior beings would learn what happened when mortals dared to challenge the divine. He had destroyed 100 ships in his long life, watched their crews scream as he tore their vessels apart with thought alone. His ship was a thing of beauty, its crystal hull shifting through colors that had no names in human language. The weapons were part of him, extensions of his will made manifest in the physical world. He needed no targeting systems or ammunition. His anger was weapon enough. The human ship grew larger on his display. It was ugly, he thought. All sharp, angles, and brutal efficiency. No grace, no artistry. Just metal and fire built by a race too primitive to understand true power. Lord Kithran to Admiral Vextar. He spoke into the communication array. I am engaging the human vessel. This will not take long. On the Defiance, Captain Chen watched the alien ship approach. It moved like no ship she had ever seen, changing direction without turning, accelerating without visible thrust. Distance? She asked. 200,000 kilometers and closing, Rodriguez reported. He's not following any predictable course. The ship is just flowing through space. Chen nodded. She had expected this. The aliens didn't follow human physics. That made them powerful, but it also made them predictable in a different way. They relied too much on their abilities. "Take us into the asteroid field," she ordered. "Best speed." The Defiance turned and burned hard toward the belt of rocky debris that orbited the system's star. The rocks ranged in size from pebbles to small moons, a maze of stone and metal that had been forming for millions of years. "Captain," Torres called from her station, "the alien ship is gaining on us. Whatever that thing uses for propulsion, it's faster than our engines." "That's the idea," Chen replied calmly. "Let him catch up, but make sure we're deep in the field when he does." The Defiance dove into the asteroid belt, her hull scraping against smaller rocks as she wove between the larger ones. Behind her, Kithran followed without hesitation. The stones meant nothing to him. His ship could phase through solid matter at will. When the distance closed to 50 kilometers, Kithran made his move. His ship suddenly became translucent, the solid matter of its hull shifting into energy. The asteroid he had been flying toward passed harmlessly through his vessel. "Foolish mortals," he whispered, "your primitive weapons cannot touch divine essence." He reached out with his mind and touched the human ship's hull. The metal began to change, its molecular bonds breaking. Down under his will, sections of armor plating simply ceased to exist, leaving gaping holes in the Defiance's side. On the human bridge, alarms screamed as atmosphere rushed out through the new gaps in their hull. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 12, Torres reported, her voice tight with stress. "Emergency containment is holding, but we're losing structural integrity." Chen watched her ship being torn apart and felt no fear. This was what she had expected. The alien could phase through matter and reshape it at will. In a straight fight, the Defiance would lose in minutes. But Chen had not planned for a straight fight. "Hard reverse," she ordered suddenly. "Full burn." The Defiance's engines roared to life, pushing the massive ship backward through space. Kithran, focused on dissolving the human hull, didn't react in time. The two ships collided with tremendous force. Kithran had made a mistake. His ship was phased, but the human vessel struck it while his concentration was focused elsewhere. The exotic matter coating the Defiance's rambow was something new, something the Zephyrians had never encountered. It disrupted the phase effect, forcing Kithran's ship back into solid matter at the moment of impact. The collision sent both ships spinning. The Defiance's reinforced prow crumpled but held. Kithran's beautiful crystal ship cracked along its length, power systems failing as energy bled out into space. Inside his damaged vessel, Kithran felt pain for the first time in centuries. His energy form flickered as his ship's power grid collapsed. How was this possible? Mortals could not hurt gods. He tried to phase his ship again to escape through the asteroid field, but the exotic matter from the human ram had contaminated his hull. The phase effect wouldn't work properly. His ship was trapped in solid form, just another piece of matter floating in space. "Impossible," he snarled, his glowing form brightening with rage. "No mortal technology can disrupt divine power." But even as he spoke, he was already planning his next move. If his ship was damaged, he would board the human vessel directly. Let the mortals try to stop a god walking among them. On the Defiance, Chen picked herself up from the deck where the collision had thrown her. Around her, the bridge crew was doing the same. Emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows. "Damage report," she called. "We're hurt but not dead," Torres replied, blood running from a cut on her forehead. "The ram bow is crushed, but it did its job. The alien ship is dead in space." "Not dead enough," Rodriguez added grimly. "I'm reading an energy signature moving toward our hull. He's coming aboard." Chen smiled grimly. This too was part of her plan. "All hands, prepare to repel boarders. And remember, our guest thinks he's a god. Let's show him what mortals can do when we're properly motivated." Kithran materialized on the human ship's bridge like a nightmare made real. His energy form cast wild shadows on the walls, and the air itself seemed to burn around him. He was magnificent and terrible, power radiating from every line of his alien body. He expected to find terrified humans cowering before his divine presence. Instead, He found an empty bridge. The mortals had fled like the cowards they were. "Face me," he called out, his voice echoing through the corridors. "Face your god and accept judgment," a voice answered from the ship's communication system. Captain Chen's voice, calm and steady. "We're right here," she said. "But if you want us, you'll have to come and get us." Kithran snarled and moved deeper into the ship. The corridors were too narrow for his full glory, forcing him to compress his energy form. He passed through bulkheads like mist searching for the crew. He found them in engineering clustered around the ship's reactor core. Chen stood at their center, a small human female with graying hair and steady eyes. She showed no fear as he materialized before her. "Captain Chen," he said, his voice like distant thunder, "you have caused me pain. For that, you will die slowly." "Maybe," Chen replied. "But first, you're going to learn something about human engineering." She nodded to Torres, who threw a switch. Suddenly, Kithran felt something wrong. His energy form was solidifying against his will, becoming dense and heavy. He tried to phase through the deck and couldn't. "What have you done?" he demanded, his voice rising with the first notes of panic. "Force field generators," Chen explained calmly. "We modified them based on our scans of your ship. They create a containment field that disrupts energy-based matter. You're stuck in physical form now." Kithran looked down at his hands and saw something that filled him with terror. They were solid, real, vulnerable. For the first time in his long life, he was truly mortal. "Impossible," he whispered. "I am divine. I am eternal." Rodriguez stepped forward, holding a plasma rifle trained on the alien's chest. "Gods don't bleed," he said quietly. "Let's see if you do." The shot took Kithran in the center of his energy matrix. Purple ichor sprayed across the engineering deck as the being who had called himself a god fell to his knees, dying like any other mortal creature. Chen knelt beside the fallen alien, watching the light fade from his star-bright eyes. "The only gods are the ones we make for ourselves," she said softly. "And we just killed one of yours." In the distance, she could see 3 more alien ships approaching. The real fight was just beginning. Admiral Vextar felt the death of Lord Kithran like a physical blow. Across the bridge of his flagship, other Zephyrians stopped their work and turned toward him. In 3,000 years of conquest, they had never lost one of their own to a lesser race. "Impossible," whispered Commander Zaltek, his energy form flickering with disbelief. "Kithran was one of our strongest. How could mortals kill a god?" Vextar's glowing eyes burned brighter with rage. "They used some kind of trap. Primitive cunning, nothing more. 3 ships will be enough to avenge him." The 3 vessels broke away from the main fleet, accelerating toward the asteroid field where the human ship waited. Each was commanded by a veteran of a dozen campaigns, beings who had witnessed the rise and fall of entire civilizations. On the Defiance, Chen watched the approaching ships on her tactical display. Her own vessel was badly damaged from the collision with Catherine's ship. The hull was cracked in 17 places and they had lost main power to 3 decks. "How long until they reach us?" she asked. 8 minutes, Rodriguez replied. His face was grim as he studied the sensor readings. 3 ships, all bigger than the one we just fought. If they all attack at once. "They won't," Chen interrupted. "They're angry. Angry people make mistakes." She turned to Torres, who was covered in grease and blood from working on the damaged systems. "How are our modifications coming?" "The force field generators are ready," Torres reported. "We can create disruption fields throughout the ship now. But Captain, the power requirements are enormous. We can only maintain them for a few minutes before we drain our reactors completely." Chen nodded. She had expected this. The force fields that could trap energy beings like the Zephyrians required massive amounts of power. They were a weapon that could only be used once. "What about the other project?" she asked quietly. Torres looked uncomfortable. "Protocol Prometheus is ready, but Captain, you know what that means. We'll be overloading our fusion reactors far beyond safe limits. The explosion could destroy us along with them. Or it could save 4 billion people from slavery," Chen replied. Sometimes the risk is worth it. She opened a communication channel to the ship. All hands, this is the captain. In 7 minutes, we're going to face 3 enemy ships. The odds are not good. Anyone who wants to transfer to the escape pods has my permission to do so. No shame in choosing to live. The ship was silent for a long moment. Then Rodriguez spoke up from his station. With respect, Captain, where would we go? If these aliens win here, they'll just hunt us down later. Better to make our stand now. Around the bridge, other crew members nodded agreement. Chen felt a surge of pride in her people. They were afraid. She could see it in their eyes, but they would not run. Very well, she said. Then let's give these false gods a lesson they'll never forget. The first alien ship entered the asteroid field at high speed, weaving between the rocks with impossible grace. Its commander, Lord Veltar, was Kithron's brother. He burned with the need for vengeance. Show yourself, humans, he broadcast on all frequencies. Face divine justice. The Defiance responded by launching a spread of missiles. Veltar laughed as his ship phased through them, the weapons passing harmlessly through his crystalline hull. But as he moved to attack the human vessel, something unexpected happened. The missiles exploded behind him, not at him. The detonations were precisely timed and positioned to create a massive electromagnetic pulse that washed over his ship. Suddenly, Veltar found his phasing ability disrupted. His ship solidified against his will, becoming vulnerable to physical attack. What trickery is this? He snarled as the Defiance opened fire with conventional weapons. Plasma bolts and rail. Gun rounds hammered his now solid hull, tearing chunks of crystal away in bright explosions. On the human bridge, Chen watched the battle with grim satisfaction. Her tactical officer had analyzed the alien technology during their first encounter. The Zephyrians' abilities were based on their energy biology interfacing with their ship's systems. Disrupt that interface, and they became vulnerable. Target his power core, she ordered. Don't give him time to adapt. The Defiance's main guns fired in sequence, punching through the alien ship's weakened defenses. Veltar's vessel exploded in a ball of blue fire, taking another god with it. But the victory was short-lived. The other 2 alien ships had learned from their companion's death. They approached more carefully, using the asteroids for cover while studying the human tactics. They're adapting, Rodriguez warned. They won't fall for the same trick twice. Chen had expected this too. The Zephyrians were arrogant, but they weren't stupid. Time for the next phase of her plan. Take us deeper into the field, she ordered. Head for the big one. The Defiance moved toward the largest asteroid in the local cluster, a mountain of rock and metal the size of a small moon. As they approached, the 2 remaining alien ships followed, sensing an opportunity to trap their prey. Captain, Torres called urgently, they're flanking us. We'll be caught between them and the asteroid. Perfect, Chen replied. Exactly where I want them. The alien ships moved in for the kill, their commanders confident that the humans had made a fatal error. They began to phase their vessels, preparing to pass through the asteroid and attack from an unexpected angle. Now, Chen said quietly. Torres activated Protocol Prometheus. Deep in the Defiance's engineering section, magnetic containment fields collapsed. Fusion reactions that normally burned in controlled chambers suddenly ran wild. The ship's power output increased by a factor of 10, then 20, then 50. The electromagnetic pulse that erupted from the dying reactors was beyond anything the Zephyrians had experienced. It washed across the asteroid field like a wave of invisible fire, disrupting every piece of energy-based technology within 100,000 kilometers. The 2 alien ships, caught in mid-phase, suddenly found themselves partially merged with the asteroid they had been trying to pass through. Rock and crystal fused together in impossible combinations. The alien commanders had seconds to scream before their ships tore themselves apart. On the Defiance, Chen felt the ship buck and shake as the pulse wave passed through them. Emergency lighting flickered and died. Life support systems struggled to restart, but the heavily shielded human vessel survived what would have destroyed any other ship in the galaxy. Damage report, she called into the darkness. Main power is gone, Torres replied, her voice strained. We're running on emergency batteries. Life support is marginal, but we're alive. Chen looked at the tactical display, now running on backup power. The alien ships were gone, reduced to glowing debris, scattered among the asteroids. In the distance, she could see the remaining Zephyrian fleet holding position, no longer so eager to engage. "Captain," Communications Officer Park said quietly, "we're receiving transmissions from across the system. The aliens' slave worlds are starting to revolt. They heard what happened here." Chen smiled in the darkness. The Zephyrians had ruled through fear and the belief that they were untouchable gods, but gods could be killed as they had just proven. Once that truth spread, their empire would crumble from within. "Open a channel to the alien fleet," she ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Vextar's glowing form. But now the alien leader looked smaller somehow, less magnificent than before. Fear had entered his star-bright eyes. "This is not over, human," he said, his voice lacking its earlier confidence. "You're right," Chen replied. "It's just beginning. We've shown the galaxy that gods can bleed. How long do you think your empire will last once that knowledge spreads?" She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. Around her, men and women worked to repair their damaged ship. They were beaten and bloody, far from home and facing impossible odds. But they had done something no one thought possible. They had killed gods and lived to tell about it. In the distance, the Zephyrian fleet began to withdraw, their retreat witnessed by 100 worlds that had thought themselves forever enslaved. The age of false gods was ending, and it had ended with the defiance of a single human crew who refused to kneel. The news spread across Zephyrian space like wildfire. On 1,000 worlds, beings who had bowed before their alien masters looked up at the stars and whispered the impossible truth. Gods could be killed. The mortals called humans had proven it. Admiral Vextar stood in the war room of his flagship, surrounded by holographic displays showing the chaos consuming his empire. Red markers indicated worlds in open revolt. Yellow ones showed systems where the local populations had stopped providing tribute. Even the green markers, supposedly loyal worlds, flickered with uncertainty. 17 systems have declared independence. In the past 6 hours, reported Commander Zalthek, his energy form dim with exhaustion. The hegemony of Altair, the Centauri Trade Federation, even the Vegan Collective, they're all rising up. "How many ships have we lost?" Vextar asked quietly. 43 vessels destroyed by rebel forces. Another dozen badly damaged. The rebels are using the human tactics now. Electromagnetic pulse weapons, exotic matter ammunition. They're turning our own strengths against us. Vextar's glowing fists clenched with rage. In 3 days, a single human ship had destroyed what took him centuries to build. The mortals had revealed the great secret that the Zephyrians had hidden for millennia. They were not gods. They were just another species with advanced technology, and technology could be countered. "Gather the fleet," he commanded. "All of it. Every ship, every commander, every warrior we have left. We will destroy that human vessel and make an example that will silence the rebels forever." "Sir," Zalthek said hesitantly, "that would leave our other territories undefended. The rebellion could spread." "Let it spread," Vextar snarled. "Without that ship to inspire them, the rebels will lose hope. We kill the humans, and we kill the rebellion with them." Across Zephyrian space, the greatest war fleet in galactic history began to assemble. 200 ships of crystal and light, commanded by beings who had ruled the stars for thousands of years. They moved with purpose toward the Kepler 442 system, where a single damaged human vessel waited among the asteroids. On the Defiance, Captain Chen worked alongside her crew to repair their battered ship. The electromagnetic pulse that had saved them had also crippled their own systems. Life support was marginal. Main engines were offline and they were down to emergency power for most systems. "How bad is it, Torres?" she asked as her chief engineer emerged from an access tunnel, covered in grease and looking exhausted. "We can get partial power back to the engines," Torres reported. "Maybe enough for 1/4 thrust. But the fusion reactors are completely burned out. We're running on battery power, and that won't last more than 18 hours. Chen nodded grimly. She had known the cost of Protocol Prometheus when she ordered it. The electromagnetic pulse had been their secret weapon, but using it had essentially destroyed their own ship in the process. "What about weapons?" she asked. "Railguns are functional, but we're down to our last few hundred rounds," Rodriguez reported from the tactical station. "Missile tubes are damaged beyond repair. We've got some small arms, but against energy beings." He didn't need to finish. They all knew how hopeless their situation was, but Chen had sent word of their discoveries back to human space before the battle. Even if the Defiance was destroyed, other human ships would carry on the fight. "Captain," Park called from communications, "we're receiving a message from Admiral Vextar." The main screen flickered to life, showing the alien commander. But now, he was not alone. Behind him, Chen could see dozens of other Zephyrians, their energy forms burning with hatred and fury. "Captain Chen," Vextar said, his voice cold with rage, "you have cost me an empire. For that you will pay with more than your life. We are bringing 200 ships to destroy you. When we are finished, there will be nothing left of your vessel, but atoms scattered in the void." Chen looked at the alien fleet on her long-range sensors. 200 ships, the entire remaining Zephyrian military force, all coming for her and her crew. "You're making a mistake, Admiral," she replied calmly. "You're putting all your ships in one place. That makes you vulnerable." Vexitar laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Vulnerable to what? Your ship is crippled. Your weapons are nearly exhausted. You are alone and far from any help. What threat could you possibly pose?" Chen smiled grimly. "I guess you'll find out." She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. Around her, men and women prepared for their final battle. They were beaten and exhausted, facing impossible odds with a ship that could barely fly. But they were still human, and humans had a talent for making the impossible look easy. "We can't run," she told them. "We can't hide. And we sure as hell can't fight 200 ships in open space. So we're going to do something else." "What's that, Captain?" Torres asked. "We're going to make them come to us, and when they do, we're going to teach them why you should never corner a human." Chen studied the tactical display, her mind working through the possibilities. The Zephyrian fleet would arrive in 36 hours. The Defiance couldn't escape, couldn't fight them all, couldn't call for help. But there was one thing they could. "To take us to the gas giant," she ordered. "Kepler 442c, best speed." The Defiance limped through space toward the massive planet that dominated the outer system. It was a giant world of swirling storms and crushing gravity, surrounded by a maze of moons and rings. Most importantly, it had the strongest magnetic field in the system. "Captain," Rodriguez said as they approached the planet, "the magnetic interference here will disrupt our sensors. We'll be flying blind." "So will they," Chen replied. "But we know this system better than they do. We've been studying it for 3 days while they've been too arrogant to bother with detailed scans." As the Defiance entered the planet's magnetosphere, the ship began to shake from electromagnetic turbulence. The aurora displays in the upper atmosphere painted the hull in dancing colors of green and blue. "This is insane," Torres muttered as she fought to keep their remaining systems online. "The magnetic field here could tear our ship apart. Or it could save us," Chen said. She opened a communication channel to the crew. "All hands, this is the captain. In 34 hours, the entire Zephyrian fleet is going to arrive in this system. They're coming here to kill us and prove that gods can't be defeated by mortals." She paused, looking around at her bridge crew. These people had followed her into hell without question. They deserved to know the truth. They're right about one thing. We can't beat them in a straight fight, but we're not going to give them a straight fight. We're going to turn this planet into a weapon and show them that humans don't give up, no matter what the odds. The Defiance settled into orbit around the gas giant, hidden in the storm systems that raged across its surface. Around them, the planet's magnetic field created a maze of energy that would confuse sensors and disrupt alien technology. Chen began to plan their final gambit. She had one ship against 200, one crew against an empire's worth of self-proclaimed gods. The smart thing to do would be to surrender and hope for mercy, but Chen had never been smart. She had always been human, and humans, as the galaxy was about to learn, were very dangerous when they had nothing left to lose. The countdown began. 34 hours until the Zephyrian fleet arrived. 34 hours to prepare for the battle that would decide the fate of every free being in the galaxy. In the depths of the gas giant's atmosphere, storms raged that had been building for millions of years. Soon, Chen thought, they would have company. She intended to make sure that when the storm finally broke, it would wash away the last of the false gods forever. The Zephyrian fleet arrived like a plague of falling stars. 200 ships of crystal and light dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, their hulls gleaming with deadly beauty. It was the largest military force the galaxy had seen in 1,000 years, assembled for one purpose: to kill a single human ship. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, surrounded by his greatest commanders. Lord Hightech, who had conquered the Rigel system. Commander Silnara, who had burned the rebel worlds of Vega. General Colthane, whose fleet had broken the Andromedan Republic. All of them united in their hatred of the mortals who dared to kill gods. "Scan the system," Vextar commanded. "Find them." The sensor sweeps revealed a maze of asteroid fields, the burning star at the center, and the massive gas giant in the outer system. But of the human ship there was no sign. "They must be hiding among the asteroid," suggested Lord Hightech. "Shall we sweep the field?" "No," Vextar replied, studying the tactical display. "They're not in the asteroids. That's where we expect them to be. These humans have shown they don't do what we expect." He pointed to the gas giant, its swirling storms visible even from this distance. "There, they're hiding in the planet's magnetic field." Clever but futile. The Zephyrian fleet moved toward the gas giant in perfect formation. As they approached, their sensors began to suffer interference from the planet's powerful magnetic field. The storms in the atmosphere created a natural barrier that disrupted even their advanced technology. "I don't like this," Commander Silnara said, her energy form flickering with unease. "The magnetic interference is making it hard to maintain formation. We should pull back and bombard the planet from a distance. And give the humans time to escape?" Vexatar shook his head. "No. We go in and finish this now. Spread the fleet into hunting formation. Search every moon, every ring, every storm system. When you find them, destroy them completely." The Zephyrian ships scattered throughout the gas giant system, their crystal hulls reflecting the aurora displays that danced in the planet's upper atmosphere. They moved like predators, confident in their power and numbers. Deep in the planet's magnetosphere, the Defiance waited. The human ship was battered and barely functional, running on emergency power and held together by determination and prayer. Captain Chen stood on her bridge watching the alien fleet approach on sensors that flickered and sparked with electromagnetic interference. 200 ships, Rodriguez reported grimly. "They're spreading out to search for us. We've got maybe an hour before they find our position." Chen nodded. She had expected this. The Zephyrians were thorough, and even the planet's magnetic field couldn't hide them forever. "Torres, are the charges ready?" she asked. "All mining charges have been converted to electromagnetic pulse devices," Torres replied. "We've got 47 of them positioned throughout the ring system. But Captain, the yield on each one is limited. Against 200 ships?" "Quality over quantity," Chen interrupted. "We don't need to destroy them all at once. We just need to strip away their advantages." She opened a communication channel to the alien fleet, broadcasting on all frequencies. "Admiral Vextar, this is Captain Chen. I know you can hear me. You came here to kill God's killers, right? Well, here we are. Come and get us." The response came quickly. Vextar's glowing image appeared on the main screen, his energy form burning with rage. "Captain Chen, you have led us on a fine chase, but it ends now. Surrender, and I will make your deaths quick." "Counteroffer," Chen replied. "You and your fleet turn around and leave this system. Go back to your remaining worlds and try to hold on to what's left of your empire. Because in about 10 minutes, you're going to learn why humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy." Gertar laughed, the sound echoing across the communication channel. "Threats from a crippled ship hiding behind a planet? You mortals truly have no sense of your limitations." "Our limitations?" Chen smiled coldly. "Admiral, you're about to discover that the only thing more dangerous than a human with nothing to lose is a human with everything to protect." She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. All hands, this is our moment. They came here thinking they were hunting prey. Time to show them they're wrong. The first Zephyrian ship to locate the Defiance was Lord High-Tech's cruiser. It approached through the planet's ring system, its sensors finally cutting through the interference to detect the human vessel. Found them, High-Tech reported to the fleet. They're hiding near the inner ring. Their ship appears to be heavily damaged. Destroy them, Vextar commanded. But leave enough wreckage for me to examine. I want to understand how mortals killed Kithron. High-Tech's ship moved in for the kill, its crystal hull beginning to phase as he prepared to pass through the ring. Debris. But as he entered the asteroid field, something unexpected happened. Hidden charges detonated throughout the ring system, creating a cascade of electromagnetic pulses that washed over the alien fleet. High-Tech's ship suddenly solidified, his phasing ability disrupted. Before he could react, the Defiance emerged from behind a large asteroid and opened fire. The human ship's railguns spoke with thunder, punching through High-Tech's now vulnerable hull. The Zephyrian Lord had time for one scream before his ship exploded in a ball of crystal shards and bleeding light. One down, Chen said grimly. 199 to go. But the electromagnetic pulse had done more than kill one ship. All across the gas giant system, Zephyrian vessels found their abilities disrupted. Ships that had been phasing through matter suddenly became solid. Energy beings accustomed to reshaping reality with a thought found themselves trapped in physical form. What is happening? Silnara called out as her own ship bucked and shook, its power systems fluctuating wildly. I can't maintain phase coherence. It's the humans, Vextar realized with growing horror. They've turned the entire planet into a weapon. The magnetic field is amplifying their electromagnetic pulses. He was right. Chen and her crew had spent 36 hours studying the gas giant's magnetic field, learning how to use its natural properties as a weapon. The mining charges were just triggers, starting electromagnetic cascades that the planet's own magnetosphere amplified and sustained. All ships withdraw to minimum safe distance, Vextar ordered. We'll bombard the planet from outside the interference zone. But it was too late. The Defiance was already moving, using the confusion to strike at other isolated ships. The human vessel appeared out of the electromagnetic storms like a ghost, fired its weapons, and vanished again before the aliens could respond. Ship after ship fell to the human tactics. Commander Velnok's destroyer, caught while solidified and unable to maneuver. Captain Zarthul's frigate torn apart by railgun fire while her crew struggled to regain their abilities. Lord Sektar's battlecruiser, destroyed when the humans somehow triggered a feedback loop in its power core. This is impossible, General Colthane raged as he watched another of his ships die. 200 ships against one and we're losing? They're not fighting us, Vextar realized. They're fighting our strengths, strip away our abilities, and we're just another fleet. But they're still human. The battle raged for hours among the moons and rings of the gas giant. The Zephyrians had superior numbers and firepower, but they were fighting in an environment that negated their greatest advantages. Worse, they were facing an enemy that refused to give up, no matter how hopeless the odds became. The Defiance was dying. Her hull was cracked in dozens of places, atmosphere bleeding out into space. Emergency power was failing. Half her crew was dead or wounded. But still she fought, appearing out of the electromagnetic storms to strike at her enemies before vanishing again. Finally, Admiral Vextar had enough. If he couldn't hunt the humans in the planet's magnetic field, he would come to them directly. His flagship dove into the storm systems, its massive bulk shrugging off the electromagnetic interference through sheer power. Face me, mortal, he broadcast on all frequencies. End this charade and meet your death with honor. The Defiance emerged from the storms, her hull scarred and burning, but her weapons still functional. The two ships faced each other in the heart of the gas giant's magnetosphere, surrounded by the dancing lights of aurora storms. You want a fair fight? Chen's voice came across the communication channel. Fine. Let's see what a god looks like when he bleeds. Vexitar tried to phase his ship, to pass through the human vessel and tear it apart from within, but the electromagnetic field around them was too strong, disrupted by the planet's natural forces and the charges the humans had detonated. His ship remained solid, vulnerable. The two vessels closed with each other, trading fire in the ancient tradition of naval combat. The Zephyrian flagship was larger and more powerful, but the Defiance had been built for war. Every line of her hull was designed for battle, every system optimized for destruction. Vextar's ship began to die under the human assault. Crystal armor cracked and shattered, power systems overloaded. The being who had called himself a god felt fear for the first time in 3 millennia. In desperation, he tried one final gambit. Abandoning his dying ship, he phased his energy form directly toward the human vessel. He would board their ship and kill them with his bare hands. God, to mortal in personal combat.